Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael Morris, Executive Director and the Lead Center Public Policy Co-Chair. I'm also the Executive Director of the National Disability Institute. Today, you are going to be listening to a wonderful set of experts. The webinar is titled Cooperation and Collaboration, the Role of Interagency Coordination in Securing Competitive Integrated Employment for Transitioning Students. But before we move ahead, let me turn back to Brittany for some of the logistical issues in terms of how to best listen to the webinar. Brittany?
Good afternoon, everyone. The audio for today's webinar is being broadcast through your computer. Please make sure your speakers are turned on or your headphones are plugged in. You can control the audio broadcast via the audio broadcast panel, and if you accidentally close that panel, you can easily reopen it by going to the Communicate menu. It's up at the top of the screen, and simply choose Join Audio Broadcast. You'll see the pop-up that appears below in the picture with the audio broadcast and the pause, stop, and sound volume control symbol. If you do not have sound capabilities on your computer, or if you prefer to dial in by phone, there are a couple of numbers listed on the side here. I'll post them in the chat box as well. Either number works well, and if you prefer the toll-free number, please choose the 855 number. The meeting code today is 661-116-133. Please note you do not need to enter an attendee ID. I will also be posting these numbers into the chat box if you need them later on. Real-time captioning is being provided today during this webinar. The captions can be found on the Media Viewer panel, which appears in the lower right corner of this webinar platform. If you want to make the Media Viewer panel larger, you can minimize other panels like chat, Q&A, and/or the participants. For today's Q&A session, we will be taking questions and answering them later on during today's webinar. Please use the Q&A box to submit any questions you have during the webinar, and we will be sure to direct the questions accordingly during that portion of the webinar. And if you are listening by phone and not logged into the webinar platform, you may also email me questions at btaylor@ndi-inc.org. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and all the materials will be placed on the Lead Center website at the link below. If you do experience any technical difficulty issues during the webinar today, you can use the chat box to send a message to me, or you can also email me. Again, my email is listed below. And with that, I will turn it back to Michael, and we will begin today's webinar.
Thank you, Brittany. Today, this webinar is being brought to you by the National Center on Leadership for the Employment and Economic Advancement of People with Disabilities. We know it by the acronym LEAD. LEAD is a collaborative of disability, workforce, and economic empowerment organizations led by the National Disability Institute with funding from the U.S. Department of Labor's Office of Disability Employment Policy. The LEAD Center mission is to advance sustainable individual and systems level change that results in improved competitive integrated employment and economic self-sufficiency outcomes for individuals across the spectrum of disability. This is one of over 30 webinars that we began some 5 years ago. And we are so glad you're joining us from all across the country. Before we move ahead with this webinar, I want to turn it over to Christopher Button, the supervisor of the Workforce Systems Policy, which is the team we work with at LEAD, and it is, of course, part of the Office of Disability Employment Policy, U.S. Department of Labor. Chris?
Thank you, Michael, and thank you to all of our amazing lead colleagues there at the National Disability Institute for the leadership that you all provide in leading this initiative. Thank you in advance to all of the attendees who are calling in today for this exciting webinar, and thank you to Social Dynamics, our partner in creating what's going to be discussed today on the webinar. ODEP's Employment First State Leadership Mentoring Program is all about systems alignment, both for policy and for programs to support competitive integrated employment for youth and adults with disabilities. We know that systems coordination and collaboration is critical to making that happen. We do know that it is also a framework, an essential part of the framework for the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, and it's critical to making competitive integrated employment work because systems have to be aligned and they have to be talking to each other so that the burden of seeking competitive integrated employment does not fall solely on the job seeker. So through EFSLMP and through the work that you all are doing, we are creating new examples, new models of how systems can work together. And today, I'm really excited to hear about the exciting things that are going to be talked about. And without further ado, Michael, I'm going to turn it over, I believe, to Corey, who's going to take us to the next part of the webinar so that we can actually hear from our amazing presenters today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris, and there's certainly nothing I can add to that aside from saying on behalf of Social Dynamics that it's really a privilege to work with the Office of Disability Employment Policy and to work with the Employment First State Leadership Mentoring Program to learn about the innovation in person-driven and employment-driven services that it's inspiring across the country. Now, one of the many states where we've seen just some amazing things happening is the great state of Utah. And without a doubt, one of the leaders that's helping those great changes to come about is Tricia Jones-Parkin, who's with the Divisions of Services for People with Disabilities in Utah, and she's the Employment First Program Administrator there. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Tricia and her team to take us through the webinar.
And Tricia, you may still be on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, sorry about that. Thank you, Corey, and I mirror what everybody said about being excited about being part of EFSLMP, and I'm excited to share a little bit about what we're doing in Utah. We have some incredible people working together across our state, and the examples we're going to share with you today are just one of those, so I'm excited to share. What we're going to be talking about today is giving you a little bit of history around the Utah State Employment First policy, a little bit about the transition project, the design and the key elements, and then the state level engagement, so how all of us on the state level work together, and then the local level perspectives and our lessons learned in terms of each of those roles. And then we're going to wrap up with a wonderful student who we've been working with and her mom, and the teacher who really kind of spent a lot of time and helped them coordinate and get where they are. So I'm excited for the very end of our presentation the most. So thank you again, and here we go. So this is my information, and then Amy Langoni, who is the Support Employment Coordinator with the State Office of Rehabilitation. She's going to be sharing some information as well. And then Lavinia Grippentrog, she is our new transition specialist with the Utah State Board of Education. Lavinia also was part of one of the pilot sites that we've worked with, so she has knowledge and expertise at both the state level and the local level. And then our local School to Work team will be introducing themselves as they share their local level experiences. So I just want to start out with a story and really what kind of laid the groundwork for our School to Work project. This is Marlowe, and Marlowe's mother contacted me. Marlowe was on our DSPD waiting list. In Utah, we have a waiting list like many other states. And Marlowe was 16 at the time, and his mother said, I want my son to have a job like everybody else, and no one will help me. Somebody gave me your phone number. And so we talked, and we figured it out, and that summer, so she called me in the spring, and that summer, Marlowe got a job at the library, and we supported him with some supported employment funds, and then he started school, and, you know, that was that. And then I got a call again the next spring from Marlowe's mom, and she said, hey, I want Marlowe to have another job, but this time I have gone to Voc Rehab Services, I'm enrolled with Department of Workforce Services, we have an internship lined up for him, we just need a little bit of support. And so we all got together, the Disability Agency, the Voc Rehab Agency, the Workforce Agency, and we all put our resources together and supported Marlowe to have an internship at the movie theater that summer. And at the end of that internship, he was hired on. And with that experience working with the workforce WIOA counselor, we said, why aren't we doing this for all of our students? And so we were able to start working with the team in Cache County, and that is really kind of the foundation of our story. Next. So prior to working with Marlowe, we did have an Employment First bill that passed in 2011. Our bill does include several agencies, so the Department of Workforce Services, the State Office of Rehabilitation, the DD Agency, which is Services for People with Disabilities, and then Substance Abuse and Mental Health. And the crux of the language is to give priority to providing services that assist a person in obtaining and retaining meaningful and gainful employment. I believe we did have the full bill language attached to the presentation if you want to check that out. But essentially, this language expected all of us to work together, and we created a lovely unified state plan. We did lots of things, but at the heart of providing services, we weren't working together as well together as we might have thought we were. And so this was an example with the School to Work project that everybody could say they were doing their part and supporting students with the most significant disabilities. Next. So this is just kind of a quick timeline of Employment First activity in Utah when our legislation passed, our partnerships formed. There's a lot of acronyms on there. Hopefully they're ones that are consistent across states, but you can see we have a lot of different things going on. Utah invested with resources towards a contract with Griffin Hammett for customized employment. We have an IPS grant going on. We're also a Pathways to Career state with Source America. So we have a lot of great things going on in our state. And so all of these, this is just kind of an example of what that's looking like and how each year things have built. Next. So here's a little bit more about the detail in terms of our pilot and what we did. So we created a coalition. This is with our resources from ODEP, our partnership with the EFSLMP. We got together and we brought all these folks together and said, what is it that we need to do? Everybody needs this training. Everybody needs to understand customized employment. And we said we also need people to be getting together regularly. So this is kind of the crux of the project and what's expected. So we have each pilot area to select 5 students in that first year. We know that it takes some time to learn, and so we said let's start with 5 students that are eligible for long-term DD services, waiver services, with the goal that students would exit high school with paid work experience or long-term employment, and then the necessary supports in place. So not that they just had the paid work experience, but that they had the resources they needed to keep that job or continue their career exploration. Next. We wanted to make sure and include support coordinators or case managers in the training and coalition. They have a key role in requesting funding and coordination of services. We wanted the WIOA youth counselors to be able to provide support and collaborate and coordinate internships and enhance the person's digital portfolio or digital resume with these paid work experiences. And then we also developed timelines. So we knew that we had to have certain pieces done by a certain time in order to line up that internship over the summer or when it made the most sense for the student. We created an orientation night for the parents that were interested in the project so they understood what these timelines were and when things needed to be completed by so they could know what to expect, and also what we expected from them. We, in order to have the local coalition sustainability, we encouraged the teams to identify upcoming students each year. We encourage them, expect them to meet monthly, and then at the state level, we support those teams with monthly calls with the team leads. We've also brought in our subject matter experts to help us with those team lead calls to add some additional perspective and resources to those teams. And we've done that with the ODEP-EFSLMP resources. Next. So the other piece that we did is we created a cross-collaboration school-to-work summit. And at this time, we formed our School-to-Work Interagency Council. We created a vision agreement document that are signed by all of the agency representatives, and it really was the foundation for us to be able to expand these pilot projects. Next. So this is the vision statement that we developed. Again, this is a cross-agency coalition, interagency council. And I think I also attached this document in its entirety so that you can see or feel free to look at that in more depth. But really we had to be committed. What is it that we want to accomplish? And we said we wanted all students to have the opportunity to exit school employed with a variety of meaningful, individualized work experiences that led to careers and other positive post-school outcomes. Next. We also listed valued outcomes that would strengthen our vision. So that was exiting school with a paid job, developing work access skills, that the local teams, including agencies and organizations, would collaborate to provide services to support transition from school to work. And again, that students would be experiencing jobs in the community instead of isolation in a sheltered workshop. We wanted to make sure and be clear what it is that we were working towards that was different than what was happening across our state in some areas. Next. We want families to expect and support their sons and daughters to work in the community. We need to braid funding across adult service agencies and for those service agencies to provide work experiences. So we wanted to make a distinction between those who are in school and those who are out of school, that we continue to braid resources, because we might not always connect with those students before they leave in every part of the state. We want to use our outcome data as the basis for ongoing service delivery guidance. Next. So our action steps, so these were what we valued. So then we said, what are we going to do to fulfill these outcomes in this vision? So we wanted to identify current best practice, roles and responsibilities for each agency. We introduced the purpose and vision to the special education directors across the state to secure their support and commitment. And then we wanted to establish value data points, baseline data, methods for collecting information, the frequency. So these are all the things that we did to set up and lay the groundwork for our pilot. Next. And then finally, we wanted to identify the feasibility of doing the school-to-work transition pilot with methods of training and outreach to engage students and families, and ensure those visions and goals and activities of our council are aligned with IDEA, the WIOA, and then our Employment First legislation, that we always keep those things in mind, that all of these pieces need to be working together. Next. So now I'm going to turn the time over to Amy Langoni with Voc Rehab, and she's going to talk about our pilot site recruitment.
Okay, so in order to recruit for our sites, we sent out an invitation letter to all of the school districts throughout Utah, and we asked them to respond to the following. One, we wanted to know their desire to participate in the School to Work pilot program, and then we wanted them to comment on their commitment to participate in all of the duties as assigned, such as training, phone calls, and events regarding the project. We also asked them to comment on their commitment to perform the data collection needed and reporting of the students and their families that are in the project. And then we wanted them to identify their needs and gaps where they could benefit from technical assistance so that they could improve outcomes for their students with the most significant disabilities. Next. From there, we did receive 13 letters of interest back, and with the help of our subject matter experts from ODEP, our School to Work Interagency Council developed an evaluation criteria to score those letters. We chose 3 sites from there that are now currently participating in our project. We kicked off the pilot with a one-day community of practice event in the spring and extended invitations to all the local level staff along with their leadership so that the leadership would be able to understand the project better in order to support their local level staff. The one-day community of practice event was well attended. We did have representatives from our LEA, our DWS staff and leadership, our Ed staff and leadership, our DD agency staff as well, and VR, and then CRPs as well. We have subject matter experts from ODEP resources on site to share successes. They helped us facilitate the team discussions, and then they also talked to the teams about what the expected next steps would be. Then we had another community of practice event in the fall to help us keep our momentum going and to highlight some of the resources that the students and families might need and what they could benefit from learning from. We also broke up the teams into role groups so that they could discuss, help each other strategize with barriers and also share successes. Next slide. In order to leverage resources to be able to augment the resources that we were getting from EFSLMP, we developed an MOU. We were able to provide the customized employment training through a contract with Griffin and Hamas, and we offered the training to all of our team members. So we had VR counselors get certification in customized, as well as our employment counselors from DWS and educators, and then the CRPs and DD agency representatives as well. And then we started on-site technical assistance visits in the fall, September and October. And again, all team members participated in those technical assistance visits too. So we had everyone going to home visits and to the schools. So it was a great collaboration. Next slide. Now I'm going to turn the time over to Lavinia to talk about the education role.
Hey, hi. So my role as a transition specialist from the Utah State Board of Education is to communicate with my leadership in our office, so the State Director of Special Education, as to the progress, needs, and vision, really, of the pilot, and also act as a liaison between my office and also all the different agencies that are involved in the pilot. Also to share information to the local education authority special ed directors in the districts that are involved, so communicate with them as to the progress and the needs for the pilot as well. My predecessor was more involved in the actual project design initially, but setting the vision and what kinds of supports local teams were going to need. We also provided a small amount of funding for teacher travel and stipends for some of the training that took place over the summer where teachers are normally not on contract. And assisting with coordinating of training events, finding space at local districts to be able to carry out those events, like the community of practice and some of the trainings like the ACRE training. Then at the local level, when I was on one of our pilot sites, the Murray team, I would identify potential student candidates and coordinate with DSPD to verify their status, whether they were on wait list or currently in services, and also coordinate with the local voc rehab counselor that was assigned to our school district. Contacting parents was a big part of this role as well, making sure parents really understood the pilot and what their responsibilities were going to be, and make sure they share that vision for their student on the pilot. Also sharing information regarding individual education plans for the students and sharing that with individuals from DWS, the youth program counselors, especially that were part of the team, as well as the vocational rehabilitation counselors on the team, and also the providers that were then part of that team, the employment specialists. Participating in team meetings, those typically occurred monthly, and I would set the agendas for those and lead those team meetings on the site basis, on the pilot level for Murray. think I'll turn the time over to the CASH team to talk a little bit more about what that looks like at the local level.
Hi, my name's John Cardis, and I coordinate secondary services for students with intellectual disabilities in CASH. And we were trained on customized employment 3 years ago by Carrie Griffin through Griffin and Hammis and Trish, and we did it through the Utah Customized Employment Initiative. During the first 2 years, we had 10 students enrolled in the pilot. 7 of those 10 had paid internships, and five of those 7 were offered employment. That's working with students with significant cognitive disabilities and intellectual disabilities. That's, in my eyes, that's some pretty powerful data to consider, and we traditionally don't have those types of outcomes with our students in employment. Next. One of the big lessons that we learn is definitely to identify students and families where there's an expectation, that they will be employed. We like working with families that are very persistent. We want to work with parents, that have followed through in applying for DSPD. Do they have an expectation that their students will have chores and responsibilities and activities in the home and community? Are they working with schools to generalize functional skills being taught? We learned from our first pilot that you not only look at the student's potential, but you really need to look at the family dynamics and support as well. The 3 students that didn't get paid internships, the families, they got frustrated pretty quickly with the length of the process and not being real clear on what the roles of each of the agency were, and so they were quick to give up, and those aren't the types of individuals that you want to identify for this type of project. Another thing we learned is that you need to be clear with students and families on team responsibilities and roles. We had a lot of confusion our first year, and honestly, it was hard for the teachers and I to really help give much direction because we weren't clear either. This last year, the second year of the project, we incorporated a parent night, and during that parent night, we talked about customized employment, roles of the agencies, and timelines. And I think really going through the timeline, that's very helpful because it gives the parents and the students a good idea of the length of this process. This isn't done quick, and this takes quite a bit of time. So I feel that's real important for anybody who's looking at implementing this type of program in their organization to go through that type of process. Next. All right, and another thing that we've learned is that Discovery, it's a great assessment tool. It's very similar to person-centered planning, but it focuses on employment. It's time intensive, but it's extremely effective in helping to identify students' vocational themes and preferences. In the past, we've tried all sorts of different vocational preference assessments and surveys. I feel like it's helpful, but I don't feel like it's as spot on as far as identifying true vocational themes for students. So it's something that I feel like has been extremely helpful in our district. And then the other lesson we learned is to have monthly meetings. Is everybody on the same page? Who's the parent checking in with? What questions do they have? Because oftentimes those questions aren't for the person they're checking in with. It's for somebody else. So it's just important that everybody's communicating and really working together as a whole. Another thing is, does the student employer, do they have concerns? And if they do, what are they? And what can we do to alleviate some of those concerns? And the last thing, are we making progress with the process? This year, we had some changes with our team members, and I feel like we're relearning, but I feel like we're actually becoming more effective in losing that individual. So it's working out, but it took a while for us to really get up to speed. this year. Some other things is, if you're looking at implementing this system, you really need to be persistent and patient. It takes a while, but when things start to click, it really does, it runs well. There's just lots of moving pieces and individuals, so it's just, you know, communicate and compromise. It's really changed our approach in student discussions, and not only with students but with families. And discovery, I'm not only seeing it with, we're not only using it with the pilot students, but we're generalizing to all the students we work with, and I think it's really enhanced our ability to narrow in and hone in on student vocational targets. And then the last thing I wanted to say, to make this work, you know, agencies really need to think differently. 2 years, 3 years ago, you know, we were all kind of sitting around wondering how this was going to work, really watching each other, but, you know, we've learned that we really trust each other now, and we communicate quite often. So I think it's a positive for all involved, and I really think it's worth the time and energy. And that's all I have to say.
Okay, next slide, please. So VR's partnership, at the state level, our leadership provided guidance and technical assistance to our local level teams on policy and best practices and how to implement the model and which funding sources to utilize for our services. We also gathered feedback from our local level staff to ascertain what level of support they needed and what training and they might need to help guide any policy changes. On the local level, our counselors completed the onboarding for each client, so applications, eligibility, wrote plans. They also authorized for the different services that were needed for the supported employment pathways, so discovery and then the milestones. We have a milestone-based system for our SE pathway. And then they facilitated referrals to additional resources if needed and provided guidance to our partners when needed. Next slide, please. As far as our lessons learned, we found that since our educators were our team leads, they sometimes had difficulty selecting the CRPs to participate on their teams, since this is out of their general scope. So we created a guidance document to help them with this process and also encouraged them to consult with their VR counselor. There was also some confusion from the CRPs as to their role, since we were asking the team to take a team approach with discovery, but we were authorizing to the CRP for their time. So we've had to help the teams define roles as to who's responsible for the different steps in some instances. In most cases, it made sense for the team to all still contribute to discovery, but have the CRP enter the data and then also help adhere to the timelines. Most teams are using Google Docs to do this and to share information. That's been, seems to be the most easy way for them to do that. We also saw the need to engage our local level supervisors in the process as we grow the model for sustainability purposes, and also it helps create buy-in from our local offices. So now we have district leadership attending team meetings, and then they're also being more engaged in the process from the beginning. Next slide, please. And then as far as our workforce services agency, at the state level, our state program manager provided support and technical assistance to the local level counselors and management. An example of this is our workforce services agency requires TABE testing for entry into their program. And although there's no outcome criteria on the TABE for entry, the program manager at the state level needed to help and inform the teams as far as what kind of accommodations could be made for them to participate. She also helped on guidance to partners to understand Workforce's role in Employment First and understanding what supports Workforce could provide to students since the pilots are serving in-school youth versus out-of-school youth. Some of the youths were able to access different leadership activities and apprenticeships through Workforce, along with some of their in-house services, such as employment counseling and some of their workshops that they have. And now I'm going to turn the time over to Coy to talk about the local level partnership.
Thank you. My name is Coy Hoskins, and I'm an employment counselor in the Logan office for the Department of Workforce Services. And before I talk about the role of a WIOA youth counselor, I just kind of want to talk about how I was introduced to the program. When I was introduced to the Customized Employment School to Work Transition Project, I felt like I was being tasked with the impossible. I was very anxious and insecure, as I love working with the youth and I love watching them grow and succeed and share their successes with them. I thought, how could I possibly help kids with special needs? I didn't have any special training in how to work with these kids, and so I was feeling very, very, very insecure. And so I approached a coworker who had been a special ed teacher and sought his guidance. And as I was expressing my concerns and my lack of skills, and when I say expressing my concerns and my lack of skills, I was all out bawling at his desk as I told him about all of this. And when I was finished, he very calmly said to me, he said, Coy, you'll be fine. Just treat these kids the way you do all your other kids. All they want is to be like everybody else and to be treated like everybody else. And so I was kind of stunned at his response, and I said to myself, I can do that. And so the rest is kind of history. I love these kids, and I love celebrating their successes with them. And so on to the role of what a WIOA youth counselor does. First and foremost, they provide a positive and caring support to the youth and their family. This is a crucial piece in building the foundation which helps build a trusting and caring relationship so that the youth and their family are comfortable asking questions and expressing their concerns throughout the education, training, and employment experience. I also provide an overview of the WIOA youth program and the expectations, making sure the connection, there's a connecting and understanding of the correlation of the education, training, and that there's a meaningful career that is found for both the youth and the employer, making it a good fit for both. I also participate in team meetings and provide support to the youth and family while they're in the WIOA youth program throughout the completion of their education, their training, and employment. I participate in the employment internship opportunity known as an EIO, the coordination of that and the completion. EIOs are opportunities for the youth to experience occupations of interest by spending time and gaining skills in a paid work site. I also assist in identifying resources available at the Department of Workforce Services and community partners. Next slide. Some of the lessons learned for me personally was that everybody wants to be treated the same and have the same opportunities. And that teamwork is very important. Under that, each partner on this team is used to being alone in the process. You know, they all work, we've all had our place in our work sites where we correlate the internships or paid work sites or whatever the case may be, but we've had to learn to work as a team and knowing when to step back and let our partner do their part so that it can be a successful experience for both the youth and the employer. And that's about it for me. Thank you.
Okay, this is Tricia. Next slide. So I'm going to talk about the role of the DD agency on the state level and then the local level as well. So on the state level, so this would be the department side, my responsibilities included communicating between leadership and local level. So if things came up or various, a certain person's funding stream or their situation needed a little bit more support, I might go to a decision maker or coordinate with their support coordinator to kind of work through some of those issues. I was also responsible for ensuring that people were eligible for DD services. in Utah, we don't have a system that communicates with each other, so we had to really kind of check and see who is in services or who is in the intake process or who was already getting waiver services. So that was a piece that I coordinated. And then also coordinating with our partner agencies on the state level as we developed an MOU for the training dollars, then being a co-lead for the EFSLMP work, so coordinating with our subject matter experts. And then in Utah, the DD Council, or excuse me, the DD agency, DSPD holds the contract with Griffin and Hamas, and so just kind of coordinating all of those different funding streams that we have for the customized employment work. On the local level, we have expected the support coordinator or a case manager to assist the person or the family with applications for the various services. Sometimes it's been the teacher that's helped out. It's really just kind of dependent on the person's team. There's been some families or parents who have not needed a lot of support, but we have enlisted the case managers for each of those people to at least be aware and involve themselves in that process, because there are some of those documents that are needed in terms of eligibility. Making funding requests for extended support. So for example, if we have a student that's getting ready to exit school, they have a job, they've used their VR dollars, that support person needs to be making those funding requests from the DD agency to make sure all of the support is in place that person needs. Attending the local coalition meetings, again, really just being on the same page as everybody and understanding what their role is. We have a lot of support coordinators or case managers in our state that have not interfaced with voc rehab or workforce services other than, just filling out an application. So it's certainly a learning opportunity for those case managers to be involved in these team meetings. And then also supporting the family and individual in understanding what each agency's role and responsibility is. It can be pretty daunting for a person to go from having a case manager and a teacher to a voc rehab counselor, a WIOA youth counselor, and all of these different folks doing different parts. So that case manager is really critical in helping them understand what those various roles are. Next. In terms of the lessons learned, we did not, I would say in the first year, some of these pre-pilot pieces that we had, we did not have the case managers as involved, and we realized how critical their engagement is. And it's certainly not perfect. We still have some case managers that are not as involved or participating as intensely as we'd like them to. We continue to work on that. We've also tried to use the information, what we've learned from working with the schools and these pilot sites, to inform our policy and practice changes. So in terms of our ODEP-EFSLMP work, we're also working on rates and reimbursement restructuring. We had some current practices and language in our service descriptions that talked about not providing services to students until they were 22. And because of this project, we have said we want to be offering and coordinating supports and resources much sooner than that. And so we've changed that language and changed that dynamic with students coming into services, or as working age youth have make funding requests earlier than 22. And then we've also know that we have to be coordinating and figuring out which participants are eligible as early as possible, so that they can be identifying the individuals that they're going to be working with and lining those up year after year. Next. So I want to just talk a little bit quickly before Marie talks about the local level piece, but the engagement, or what we've done in terms of with the community rehabilitation providers on the state level. So as I mentioned before, we're also working on rates and reimbursement restructuring in our state, and we engaged our stakeholders who were involved in these school to work projects, as well as provider transformation, to help us revise these service definitions, because they are doing the work. They're part of the demonstration projects that are helping us get to the outcomes that we want, to ensure that our service definitions have greater flexibility and will help us be able to provide braided resources to working age youth and adults in a better way than what we have now. So we wanted to engage them both at that state level transformation, and then Marie Holst is going to talk about their agency's local level engagement. Marie?
Thank you. My name is Marie Holst. I work at Cash Employment and Training Center here in Logan, Utah. This has been an interesting experience for us. It's been very helpful in focusing on the customized employment, where we set up the interviews with families and we work closely with the schools. Sometimes it's a process that is frustrating to parents because they want things done yesterday. It can be a frustrating thing. Finding the themes in the discovery is also very important. We've learned that they need to be broad, such as culinary arts or landscaping, not so specific as something like baking, but something broad so that we can look at a variety of things. Also in coordinating when they get jobs for their internships, we have to make sure we have to work closely with the workforce services so that the employer is eligible to participate in the program, because that's an essential part of this program as well. In providing job coaching, that we have had some individuals who constantly want to have the job coach there who may not necessarily need it, whereas others, the employer says, you just come and check in on them and we'll take care of all of the training. So there again, in selecting the individuals to participate in the pilot project, we've had a variety, some who really do need close supervision where others are able to work more independently. The next slide. I told Trish that we just needed one big slide that said commitment, because it's commitment not just from the agencies, but from the families. Some of them have never thought of their sons or daughters being employable in the community, and so when you talk to them about this is your son or daughter can work in the community, they're very frightened by that whole idea because that's not what they've envisioned for themselves. So that's one of the things that we've learned, is that educating parents to individuals' capabilities and focusing on their skills is really, really important. As far as evaluating the various funding sources, working closely with the vocational rehabilitation and your long-term support agency is important, because, like I say, some folks need minimal job coaching support and others are requiring more, so that's kind of a challenge at times. We also come to the meetings every month and work with our individuals, the other agencies, to support this. And one of the other things that we have learned is that the parent cooperation is essential, because if the parents aren't buying into employment, then it's hard to get the individual excited, and it's hard to get the other types of things support. Sometimes the transportation is an issue, and so if the parents aren't involved, then that can be a challenge as well. But overall, it's been a very positive experience, and one that is very important in going forward. Thank you.
This is Tricia. I just have one more to add to that from the state level perspective in terms of our lessons learned as we've worked with several other CRPs as our pilot projects have expanded. We were so focused on making sure we had the employment specialists at the table and getting the training and getting the technical assistance. But what we have noticed is that sometimes the agencies that they work for aren't necessarily understanding the difference or how to restructure or reprioritize, the resources and align their employment specialist time to be able to really provide customized employment and commit to it. And so something that we have developed for this next round with Rip and Hammis, and we've all kind of given some input on it, is to really provide some TA to the CRP directors and agency leadership so that they understand what this project is about, that it's not just the employment specialist knowing what customized is, that the entire agency is understanding that. And I think that I'm looking forward to see what that outcome looks like and how we can, hopefully things will run a little bit smoother as far as, some of the turnover issues and making sure that the folks working on the project have the time to dedicate to working with the students and be in the project. Next, Lavinia.
Okay, as far as pilot program next steps, support local teams on-site TA starts and is provided throughout the year. So we're getting ready to bring on board the next 2 pilot sites, and so we will be looking at dates to start training for that and what that TA looks like. And we have some meetings actually coming up in about a week or so with the 2 new pilot teams for next year, kind of setting things up for the summer and for the following year. Collaborate efforts with Utah's Partnership in Employment Systems Change Grant. Tricia, maybe you could speak to this one a little bit more than I could.
Right, so our plan is to essentially, use the outcome data, all the pieces that we've done with our ODEP work, and then also collaborate with the resources that we have from our Partnership in Employment Systems Change Grant to have some sustainability to the pilot sites that we're currently working with and track all of the data.
Okay, and then we'll utilize data collected to guide policies and practices at the local and state level. This pilot really aligns with our goals at the state office for increased outcomes for students with disabilities, and so we really want to use that data to, to kind of give us guidance on what we need to do to increase our outcomes, and also to look more closely at Indicator 13, which is that transition plans are very comprehensive and they include other agencies, and so this pilot really aligns very well with that and will give us data to see if we have increases in that particular indicator statewide as well.
So now we're going to turn the time over to Lauren and Betty and Laura, and they are going to finish out our webinar to share in sharing their story. So I will turn it over to you.
Hi, I'm Lauren Latham. I'm the classroom teacher over at River Heights Post High, and I'm Laura's teacher. I've been there for 8 years. A little background about our school. In the past, I've run a pretty traditional post-high program where during the school day, the students would have volunteer job placements that I would get for them at some pre-identified sites where they could learn and grow in their vocational skills. I would try to place students in jobs based on kind of what the students said they wanted to do as a job and just from any parent output I got. But since going through the customized employment training, I've been placing students at jobs differently. I've looked at the students' interest and their skills. I've been working on using small businesses and family connections and connections that I have myself. My first 6 years being at the post-high program, I've had a total of 2 students that have had paid employment while in school. This year alone, I have 5 students that have paid employment. So it's really, this program has really been helping in making a lot of great changes here in Cache County. So on to Laura. Laura has been my student for the past 3 school years. Even before she started with this pilot program, paid employment has always been the goal for Laura. On thoughts of a job, of what she would want to do, she'd talk about bagging groceries at the local grocery store by her house. I think mainly because she'd seen other people with disabilities have that job. She knew she could do it, and some convenience to location. So we did a volunteer job try at a grocery store, and she did well there. She could have made that her job if she was able to get hired on. It's weird that grocery bagging is pretty competitive in our city, but it is. But there were tasks in that job that didn't really suit Laura. So customized employment has really helped her, the team, take a different approach with Laura. Since she's had her paid job, which she will tell you about, I've watched Laura's confidence and independence grow. The first time she got paid, she came to school really excited to tell everyone about her first paycheck. So Laura and her mother, Betty, are going to tell you about their experience.
Hi, I'm Betty Weeks. For Laura, it's always been a goal for us to help her be self-sufficient and for her to have employment. And so we kind of started at home that she still had to do the same types of jobs that everyone else did. Even though she didn't like it or she thought it was hard, over time she kind of just adapted, and I expected that of her. We learned about this program mostly through Lauren, her teacher at school, and from John at the LEA representative. They are the ones who kind of gave us an idea of what their pilot program was doing and that they had had some success. So I think we got in on the 2nd year. And it is a lot of paperwork for a parent. You have to apply to each agency and go through all of their things. I was not a fan of that, but you have to work with what you have. So we did our team meetings, and we found something that I didn't even know. Laura decided she wanted to learn how to decorate cakes. She could do things, and we taught her kind of all along, things at home, and then we reinforced them at school about cooking and baking, and so we used those kinds of things, and she said she wanted to decorate cakes. It was kind of a surprise to me, so we found some. Actually, it was the Cache Employment Training Center found some classes locally here for her, and Workforce Services worked with us. So Laura did 4 cake decorating classes, and Tiffany with the Cache Employment Training Center, who's not with us anymore, she came and took pictures, and then they started working on where could Laura work. And they got a job for her at Apple Spice Bakery. And Laura was very, very concerned about it because Laura had to do some different things. She had always had someone at school, they taught her how to use public transportation. So they would help her figure out the route, they would help her get to her job when she bagged groceries, she'd have someone with her, and then they would help her get up to the university to go to seminary. And then they'd help her get back. So then she had to go a little bit farther, and so now she goes to school, and she gets on the city bus by herself, and she has to go to work. And sometimes there's some challenges with that if she misses a connection, but it's been a really good process that the school has done, and everybody that's been involved to help her kind of overcome the small things that could trip her up. And so she started her job, and she had some concerns, and she has to be on her feet 3 hours a day. And there's some challenges with that if you're not used to it. But Laura has been a hard worker, and they have enjoyed that, and it's been a very, very positive thing for her. And I really do appreciate all of the agencies working together. COI with Workforce Services was very helpful in helping us understand what she needed from us, and then we had to meet those criteria. We had to give copies of her paychecks, we had to report in, we had to do testing, and it is a process, but I think it's a very worthwhile process, and we're really proud of Laura. So I'm going to turn you over to Laura. Say hello.
Hi, I'm Laura. Hi, I'm Laura.
Tell them about what you do at your job.
And
tell them how you take the food out.
And I just bring food to customers, what number they have. And I also, when they're done eating, I just take their bus tables and I also filled up water and I start cleaning the tables. And I've also been putting like bag of soups in the
Tell us about Ryan and Logan. Your boss's name is what? Go speak up. Laura has a really good relationship with her boss and with the assistant manager. They have been amazingly supportive, and they tease Laura a little bit and joke with her. And when I talked to the manager yesterday, I asked, is there anything that I can do to help Laura understand better? And he says, no, we give her extra tasks, and we ask her to help in other ways that she hadn't been used to. She's loaded the dishwasher. She's chopped up vegetables, little things that help them out that she can do and that can help her grow. Do you like your job? Tell them.
I also like my job.
Are you done? Anything else about your job?
What about something she's working towards?
Is there anything you want to spend your money on? No. Laura likes to spend her money. We have been working with helping her budget. She's not very pleased with me telling all her secrets, but it's a process for them, like any other child, to learn how to use their money wisely and how to hold some back for medical or prescriptions. And it has been a really good experience for us. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. This is Corey DiBiase with Social Dynamics. Again, thank you both so much. That is a great perspective on your experience with this project. Tricia, before I go into questions, did you have anything, you or anyone on your team have anything else you wanted to add before we go over into the question and answer segment?
Oh, sorry, I was pushing the wrong button. I apologize. I don't have anything to add. I just want to thank Lauren and Betty and Laura for sharing their story, and thank you so much. I know it's not easy to have the pressure of knowing what to say, and I really appreciate that.
Yes, it was fantastic, and thank you from Social Dynamics and from everyone else so much to everyone on the teams. It's great to really see this representation from the state level to folks working on the local level to folks receiving services, and just the number of different perspectives we've heard that I think we don't often get the chance to do that all in one setting, and I just really appreciate everyone's effort so much in coming on and talking about this stuff. And we do have a number of questions, so everyone's going to have some more opportunities to give their perspective. First question I had was, I think, Tricia, this will be for you, is who were the subject matter experts you used through the EFSLMP program?
Sorry, this is Tricia. So our subject matter experts for EFSLMP, Marcia Threlkeld, helped us with our technical assistance specific to the site, and then we had Jane Boone and Ellen Condon help us with our vision document that we created the year prior. And then our subject matter experts with Griffin Hammis have been Ashley Lance, Patty Cassidy, Carrie Griffin, and then Doug Crandall has done some work in the southern part of our state.
Great, thank you. And the next question, I think this could be addressed by both folks on the state and local level, is how have you involved the Utah State Independent Living Council and the local centers for independent living in the project?
This is Tricia. Honestly, I don't know that we have involved them as much specifically when a student has maybe had a need or something that the Independent Living Council could meet. We have certainly directed them to those, or as we've been trying to kind of figure out what that person's support needed to look like when they were leaving school. We certainly looked at the independent living centers, but as far as being a member of our coalition, that is not an entity that we engaged. It's certainly something that we probably should, and I appreciate bringing that question.
And were there any reflections on that from the local level? I know it might have been some other things on the local level.
We have some independent living skill centers here, but we haven't really involved them. Most of the folks that we've been working with have lived at home, so we use the families. I'm sure that that's a place we can refer them to as the needs arise.
Okay, great. Well, that sounds like a connection that's out there to be made. So as with everything, these partnerships keep developing, so that's great. So the next question, actually I have a couple questions that kind of all point in the same direction, and it's about, I think this is coming from some community rehab providers and possibly other agencies like folks in voc rehab agencies, saying that they're having some trouble getting into the schools, being able to work with them more directly, building those partnerships, schools sometimes perceiving that they're doing some work exploration stuff on their own, and maybe they don't need those partnerships, or maybe they're not as open to them as they could be. So I guess a question for both folks from the school perspective and from the CRP and agency perspectives, what are some good tips for folks on how to build those partnerships where those partnerships don't currently exist on the local level?
Hi, this is John. What I would suggest doing is going in, touching base with the school and see what you can do as far as assisting them with development of transition plans and assessments. I think if you go in there willing to, work with individuals and there's some specific agenda items you want to work on, I think they have a tendency to be a little more open, and especially if you look at it from a transition plan and starting there, you're actually, providing some assistance that's going to help them out in IEP development. That's probably where I would start and see where that gets you with them.
This is Marie. As a CRP, and in doing the discovery, one of the things they want you to do is to talk to the people who know the student the best. So along with their families, that would be the schools who have worked with them. So I think making sure that the schools know that you respect their opinions and you can work together on the process. This isn't one company does it all, because it would take us forever to know what the schools have learned. So it's just imperative that you work together and let them know that what they know is valuable to what you want to continue on with the individual.
Great. Thank you so much, guys, for that that insight. Another question I'm getting is just a request for Amy and Coy's contact information. Maybe that's something we can share emails or that kind of thing as an attachment to the presentation.
Sure, that's fine with me. This is Amy.
Great, so we'll make sure that gets shared out. Next question I'm seeing on the list here. Are CRP staff always doing the customized employment services, and is VR always in a position to pay for those services?
Tricia, don't you want to answer this question?
Sure. So the answer to that is, and I think just to kind of, in terms of this particular project, we've certainly said there are elements of the discovery process that a teacher might be doing, but ultimately that the CRP is the one responsible for the discovery staging record, the vocational profile, the digital portfolio. That, the teacher, as we're just kind of looking at those emerging themes and what their interests are in developing those activities, the best practice is that the employment specialist and the teacher are communicating, and the teacher might be taking on one of those activities, taking pictures, providing the narrative, and then sending that to the employment specialist to add into the staging record and the profile and all of those sorts of things, so that even though the employment specialist is responsible, and getting paid for the discovery, that the team is working on it together. And we've also tried to, especially as the team members are learning the process in the first year, expect the team members to be engaged in a discovery activity or going to do a home visit when we've had the technical assistance experts on site with the different school teams that we're working with, so that it's not just the CRPs that are understanding all the valuable things that you learn in a person's home, or what you learn when a person's doing a discovery activity. And it certainly isn't an entourage of people. We try to be mindful that it's not an overwhelming number of people, so it takes away from the process, but that everybody's getting an opportunity to get to know the student in a different way in terms of the learning piece. In terms of the funding piece, so, the first year that we worked specifically in Cache County, our state went on order of selection, and so we did not have funding from Voc Rehab at that time for discovery, and so we used the DD agency dollars. We did some one-time authorizations, for the cost of discovery during that time, and it was rough just because it wasn't something we were expecting, but our agency was committed to the project and wanting to, help people have that experience. And so then when that order selection was lifted and they started moving people through, we made sure that all the students that we were working with were either on the waiting list or, in that process, so that the VR could then get them into plan and be a partner in braiding some of those resources. Did I answer that question?
I think it's important, this is Marie, that the VR people buy into this, because here we've had a lot of the VR counselors ask us if they have to do the customized employment. Can't we just do it the traditional way? And their whole process to get a person eligible to do the customized employment has taken a longer period of time, which then has caused some frustration, especially to families who are saying, but you said they would have a job by this time, when in fact the funding isn't always readily available. So depending on what state you're in and what their process is like, it's important that the VR counselors know that the traditional way doesn't always work, and the customized employment has been very successful in the whole process of this pilot project.
Thank you guys very much. And this is Corey again. I think one of the things I would add just from seeing in a number of states, the capacity for the Employment First State Leadership Mentoring Programs too, that the feedback loop between local experience and what's happening on the ground and the work on the policy level, the fact that that feedback loop is existing in these Employment First states, and that as we learn things on the ground, we're able to feed it up into policy, and those policy innovations feed the work on the ground. That's just one of the most potent things about this model, and you sort of see it in exactly how this development is occurring. Jumping into the next question, because we do have a bunch of them, someone wanted to know, what is the local education administration budget commitment for this project?
Well, at this point, we're not really committing dollars to it. It's time. I mean, really, that's what it comes down to for us. You know, as far as like all the different other agencies, that's more of the dollar commitment. For us, it's more of using discovery and customized employment as an assessment tool through the discovery discussion and the discovery activities. So it's just changing things from the way we used to do. And staffing-wise, we have looked at potentially adding some additional staff for some of those one-on-one activities, but really that would be about the biggest impact as far as our budget goes.
Great. Thank you very much. Another question, this is a great question. A number of speakers mentioned the importance of work with parents and the importance of engaging parents in this work. How is the communication handled between, there are so many agencies at the table here, and of course one of the big purposes of this is to make sure that parents and families and other stakeholders understand the roles of all those different agencies, but is there a single point person that those families typically communicate with, or do they or is it their responsibility to navigate the different partnerships kind of on their own?
In the beginning, we had one point person. Now the school does a lot of the initial stuff, and because the parents are most familiar with the school teachers, that's typically who gets the most questions.
Okay, so there's kind of a natural point person there, and then that's the assistance from there to assist with the navigation and the different activities. Thank you very much.
Well, this is Coy. I just have some input too. I get a lot of questions and stuff from the parents because I feel like we have that relationship that is so important. And so I do get a lot of questions about a lot of different things, and so I try to find out, if I don't know the answer, the resource that I need to refer them to and get them connected with that. So as the WIOA counselor, you may find that you're getting a lot of questions as well.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Next question, I'm going to direct this initially to Tricia, and you can enlist others to assist you with this one, Tricia. What did the process look like for the state to modify funding streams to provide resources to support employment for working age youth and adults? So nice simple question there for you, Tricia.
Right. So, you know, as I looked through the language that we have in our service description and in kind of our guiding waiver language, it really just said it was, you know, it talked about providing support to students, you know, or to young adults after the age of 22, but there was nothing that said it couldn't happen before that. Our language talks about using vocational rehabilitation dollars first, which we are in this project. So we really just kind of looked at what the language said, and then we talked with our Department of Health. You know, our agency leadership said, you know, if all of these pieces are happening and this person wants to have support for a summer job, why wouldn't we use resources for that if all of these other pieces are being met or this criteria is being met? So it really wasn't a big modification in terms of the language that existed, but what we have done is create, in our new service descriptions, really addressing some appropriate services for transition age youth to be able to using some of their waiver dollars for pre-employment skill building and exploration and lots of different kinds of things that will be coming into our waiver now. But we kind of just looked at what it really said and what we thought it meant, and we've just kind of gone from there. That's not a very clear answer, but it's what we did.
No, it's certainly a great question about what's certainly a complicated and ongoing process, but that's very helpful. Thank you. This is a question I'm going to field back to the folks on the local level. How do you feel, having known Laura or other students for 3 years, how is that, for 3 years or more, how has that complemented the discovery process? How has having that time to work with folks expanded your knowledge of them? And do you see, as the project moves forward, will there be changes as you're meeting new students who are coming into the process and that you haven't had as much time to work with in the past?
So this is Lauren. I feel like it definitely has changed already with how, when I'm getting new students in, I like to meet with the parents, and just that initial parent conversation that I have, I really kind of model it through the discovery home visit initial interview that we have. I pretty well model it so I can get a lot of that information beforehand. John Cardis is with our students from 6th grade on, and he builds that relationship with parents starting in 6th grade. So he has a lot of that information already by the time they get to post-high. But yeah, I think one of the biggest things I've done to change is just that changing how I meet students with the conversations, not focusing it mainly on where have they been doing academically and what are their classes like at school and stuff, what's their behavior like. I've been modeling a lot more of it. What's the student like at home? What kind of chores are they doing, and trying to get an idea from parents of where they want to go into the future and trying to help guide them towards employment as much as I can. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, and I think really looking, just as the person as a whole, and that's why I referenced earlier, a person-centered planning, because it is kind of a form of person-centered planning. It's a similar type of setup, but it's definitely geared more towards vocation. And we don't ever ask the big question. It's hard for me to sit in a meeting when I'm across the table from a family and we go, what do you want to do when you get older, versus, it's a discussion, and what types of activities are they drawn to? What types of activities are they not interested in, So it's just, I think we've always had those types of conversations, a lot of it through parent surveys and just some discussion, but I feel like it's just better tuned now than it has been in the past.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Another interesting question, also coming back to parents and parent engagement, family engagement. What is the role of benefits planning in the project overall? And so that's kind of one general question. But also, what impact has benefits planning had on engaging parents in this process?
I'll take that question. This is Tricia. We have referred the students of the projects to the benefits planning specialists in our state. We have very few, so that is a challenge that we have, and it's something that we're trying to address in our rates and reimbursement restructuring as well, to have it be a fee-for-service option, obviously with the right level of training and quality controls in place. But I do believe it's helped. We helped a lot of the students understand what they needed to do to be eligible for the student earned income exclusion because they were doing work during their school time and those sorts of things. We facilitated some step-by-steps about how to go about doing that so that they understood, especially while they were in school, what the work would impact their benefits. And then it's a piece that we have in all of our data sheets. Has this person met with the benefits planner? So it's just a list on the steps of the things that we're doing as part of the process with each of the students.
Great.
This is Marie. We have a lot of parents who are even hesitant to have their sons and daughters employed because it will affect their Social Security, their supplemental income. So that's when we do refer them to the benefits planner. And if from what I understand from the rehab counselors here, if the person is employed, they're moved up on the list to talk to the benefits planner more readily than if they're just looking for employment.
Okay, thank you both very much for that input. I know that's a crucial piece for folks looking at this stuff that they can engage with, so thank you very much. Here's a question, and see if we can fit into this and maybe one more. How did the Workforce Center youth counselors work differently but in partnership with the folks at Vocational Rehabilitation? So what does that partnership look like effectively? Who handles what, and how does that look on the ground?
Good question. This is Coy. My role as the WIOA counselor is I support my youth with their education. I help fund training, and then we mentioned the employment internship opportunity earlier, and so I also take care of that funding as well. I can't really speak for the vocational rehab counselor. Their role, they attend the IEP appointments regularly, I do know that. They're just, this year in our area anyway, their funding is coming into play for the first time since we started this, and I believe they're going to be funding the job coaching. And so I fund the EIO, and they fund the job coach who accompanies the youth to the EIO. And I hope I answered your question.
Hi, this is Amy. I'm just going to add to Coy's response. So currently, as Tricia mentioned, when this pilot started, we were on, we still are on order of selection, but all of our categories were closed. But we currently have our MSD category is open. So with our current 3 sites, the VR counselor is attending meetings, and then we are authorizing for discovery and then the job seeking services. We have milestone-based services here, so they're authorizing for those. And then with some of the internships, if an individual needed a lot of support on an internship, we have blended funding with our 3 agencies. So VR currently has a milestone temporary work experience or internship milestone, which covers the cost of the development of the site, and then another stipend for job coaching. But if a person needed extensive job coaching on an internship or a temporary work site, then our DD agency has supplemented with some coaching hours in that situation, and then our workforce agency has provided that OJT or apprenticeship fee to the employer. So that's an example of how we've blended funding in those situations.
That is great. Thank you so much. And we are right at the line time-wise, so I do want to hand it back to Michael to close this out. But first, I want to thank everyone, Tricia, Amy, Coy, Laura, thank you so much all for your input. It's just been a great session, and thanks again to all of our audience members for participating and for asking all these great questions. So, Michael, I'll hand it back over to you.
Thank you, Corey, and thank you for the whole team from Utah. It's a great presentation, really wonderful insights and perspectives on what others can do in other states, and really wonderful depth and perspective on exactly how to bring the workforce system, VR, the education system, all parties together. So thank you all. Thank you, Corey, for great moderation and keeping the questions moving. I do want to bring to everyone's attention, we have yet another webinar in this mini-series, Wednesday, March 29th, next week, 3 to 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and the topic is Service Provider Transformation from Policy to Opportunity. So I hope the several hundred of you will pass the word along to others. I hope you'll be back next week. And let's look at the final slide. I hope as well you will connect with the LEAD Center, our website, leadcenter.org. You can sign up for the LEAD Center news. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And my thanks again to the ODEP team and Social Dynamics and others who helped put this together. Really extraordinary. I want to leave you with one last point. I know we're in overtime, but today was a historic day for those of you who follow interpretation of IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, highly relevant to the discussion today, in a case out of Colorado in the Denver area. And the case is called ENDREW, E-N-D-R-E-W, and then the initial F, versus the Douglas County School District. In a unanimous decision, 8-0, with the decision written by Supreme Court Justice Roberts, this was about what is the standard of education to meet what's called FAPE, Free Appropriate Public Education for Students with Disabilities. And what they did is overturn the lower court and the appeals court decision that it was a minimum standard of education. They said that is not strong enough, that expectations of students and families are higher, and that was the intention of the law. They did not go as far as to identify a universal standard or uniform standard for school districts across the country. More will come, and they also did indicate a deference to the school system experts. But I think it does raise the bar for families, for educators, for teachers, for school administrators to rethink. It's not just providing a place for students with disabilities to go to school, but it's providing the type of educational opportunity that our wonderful presenters from Utah presented today. If that could be the standard, we'd be seeing far better valued outcomes for youth in transition across the country. So I leave you with that. I think you'll see it on the national news tonight. You'll see it in your favorite media source for information. And I'll just leave you with the teaser that the decision actually involved the current Supreme Court nominee, who was engaged in the lower court decision and has upheld that decision multiple times in different factual situations. So I'll leave it to you to investigate further. Thank you all, and we hope we'll have you with us next week, March 29th, webinar, Service Provider Transformation from Policy to Opportunity. Have a wonderful afternoon. Take care. Thank you.